Good day, I am Engr Ntak Gabriel. I'll be taking you on carpentry tools, uses and their maintenance. Our learning objectives today is, at the end of this session, the trainees will be able to identify and state the types of hand tools used to carry out basic carpentry tasks without supervision. So, what are these carpentry tools? What are these carpentry tools? They are tools required to cut, bring in shape, or even install certain basic building materials. This is used while constructing our homes, offices, school buildings, timber bridges, or maybe a ship, etc. These tools can perform all these functions. The first tool that whether a professional carpenter or non-professional carpenter see to perform carpentry operations is what we call a tool belt. A tool belt is a well-arranged kit containing all necessary tools, which allows you to work efficiently and makes it much easier for you to walk or climb ladders for your work more safely. That is the function of a tool belt. Whether you are a professional carpenter or you are a non-professional carpenter, but if you are seeking to carry out carpentry operations, you need tool belt. The next thing is, as a carpenter, you must have what we call a workbench, a wooden workbench. And a wooden workbench for carpenters is quite different from somebody that deals with metals. That is why their workbench or wooden workbench is quite different from the metal workbench. Carpenters does not use metal workbench because it makes, assuming if the table or the workbench is oily, it stains the wood, and or if it is rust or rusty, it also a kind of stain the wood. So metal top will scratch face of wood as it is harder. And when you want to tap or when you want to knock something, it makes it noisy while working. Therefore, metal workbench is not recommended for carpentry work. And this wooden workbench is used for setting out, sewing, planing, cutting, and even assembling your work pieces. The next is, as a carpenter, you must have a drill, a hand drill that you use in drilling holes. Assuming you want to carry out, you want to drill a hole, you must need that, whether power drill, hand drill, or cordless drill. And cordless drill, they are used to drill holes in various materials with appropriate drills. That is, different sizes of drills. They also do grinding, polishing, driving screws, and sanding surfaces with special attachments. An example of which is what we have here. This is a cordless drill. As I mentioned, it can do grinding, it can polish, it can drive screws. Cordless drill is one among the drills, the tool used by carpenters. As I said, it can drive screws, it can grind, it can even carry out sanding surfaces with special attachment, just like the attachment for the screwdrivers. I insert the screwdriver's star here, then insert it into my chalk, and then tight my chalk. And if I want to drive a screw straight, I can just drive. Whatever kind of screw, it depends on the head, whether flat, star. There are exchangeable heads here that I can change to that specific kind of screws I want to drive. So it's one among the tools needed by carpenters. The next is measuring tape. Measuring tape is one among the most useful tools in woodworking, and it is widely available in many commercial hardware facilities. If I want to take my measurement, I use my tape to take my measurement. You can't work without specification. If the specification is given that the length of this table is, or a table is supposed to be 1 feet, that is almost 30.3 millimeters, then you must use your tape to ascertain that value. Next is sander. Sandpaper is to carry out polishing. Sandpaper is a coated adhesive consisting sheets of abrasive cloths or abrasive paper, which is used for smoothing surfaces. And we have what we call the powered sander. This is a sander here. Your sandpaper is being placed here, and you carry out when the cord is powered or the machine is powered, you carry out, there is a trigger here. When you trigger, you can now carry out your smoothing or the smoothing of your surfaces using the sander. That's the work of a sander. Or you can equally use, if you don't have the machine, you can use like something like a wood that you can just grab like this with your sandpaper, something like this. Then you can now carry out your smoothing. Next is square. Tri-square is used to guide setting out. It can also check right angles. Apart from checking of right angle, it can also check 45 degrees. It depends on the kind of angle you want to ascertain or you want to achieve. Next is what we call a marking gauge. Marking gauge is the next tool that as a carpenter you need to have, and it is used to mark lines parallel to the edge or end of a piece of wood. And this is a typical example of a marking gauge. So a marking gauge, it depends on the measurement. Assuming you want to mark a parallel line of, let's say, 60 millimeters, you now adjust and then tighten like this. This side is the edge of your wood. Then you can now draw your line parallel, which from the face down to the end, it will give you that 60 millimeters line parallel. That's the work of a marking gauge. And then the next one is saw. As a carpenter, you must use hand saw. This particular saw is what we call a back saw, which is used for cutting line, as it is, or as in marking a wood joint. You can either call it a back saw or a tenon saw. This is equally a hand saw, which is used for cutting of wood. Next is what we call the jigsaw. This is a typical machine which we call a jigsaw, and the purpose for it is to cut curves or straight lines in various materials with appropriate cutting edge. The holding of cutting blade is not standardized. Check your cutting blade properly before purchase for replacement, assuming you want to replace. We also have what we call a jack plane or a plane. Planes comes in different types, and the types of planes, it could be either jack plane, jointer plane, smooth plane, spoke shaft, which is, this is what we call spoke shaft. It's part of the planing tools that we have. Assuming you want to plane like a groove, you use the spoke shaft to carry out that. And all these planes are used for what? Primarily used for smoothing the surfaces of the wood. Then, as I mentioned before, they are classified into different types: jack planes, jointer planes, smooth planes, spoke shaft, and the rest. So we have chisel too is one among the tools that a carpenter must have. Like what I have here is what we call, there are different types of chisel. This particular one is what we call mortise chisel. They comes in different forms for different applications. The next tool that a carpenter needs is what we call a pincer. A pincer is used for extracting nails. In order not to damage the surface of the timber around the nails and to improve leverage, a small piece of softwood will be placed under the jaw before you extract your nails. If not, you may end up damaging the face or the surface of your wood. The next thing that a carpenter needs is work holding devices, and which is, we have the wood work vise, which is used to hold wood while being planed, and we have a bench vise attached to a working table to hold the workpiece. We have another work holding device which we call the F clamps. There are different types of clamps. This particular one that I am showing you now is what we call F clamps. Then we have C clamps, others are C clamps, hand screw clamps, satch clamps. These are some of the clamps that a carpenter needs. The next tool that a carpenter needs is what we call sliding bevel. Sliding bevel is used for guiding the setting out. Checking an angle other than right angle. This is a typical example of a sliding bevel. It depends on what I want to, the angle I want to a kind of set out. I can now adjust. This is at right angle. If I like, I adjust like this. I now screw. I tighten it. I now mark whatever I want to mark. It's one of the tools required by a carpenter. Sharpening tools. Yeah, as you use most of these tools, the cutting edge becomes dull. And when it is dull, what do you need? Or what do you want to do? Or what are you going to do? You must resharpen that particular blade in order to make it sharp so that you can cut whatever you want to cut or mark whatever you want to cut. So this is a typical example of the tool used for sharpening. It is an abrasive stone used for precise sharpening of tools. That was the work of this. And we also have a grinder tool. Tool grinder is also another sharpening tool. Then we have marking knife, which others call it utility knife. It is used to mark or make a cut lines, setting out, screen or chiseling. That's the work of this. I have talked on most of these tools or the tools that a carpenter needs. We have talked on the sander, the claw hammer, the climb, F climb, sander, planes, handsaw, and the rest. There are a lot of tools that as a carpenter you need. But whether you are a professional carpenter or a non-professional carpenter, if you want to carry out carpentry operations, you need most of these tools. For more details on the carpentry tools, please log into our online website or platform. You will get the details there in our course-related materials. Thank you very much. I still remain Engr Gab Ntak.